Hello guys, welcome to another video, and this one I wanted to do a bit of discussion on Vaal Spells because this patch has some new things for Vaal Spells, and I think even last patch there were some additions where you were kind of getting close to having something and it wasn't quite there, and in this patch you are getting a lot more for those skills. So first of all, let's take a look at one of the new skills here in the patch notes, which is Pact of K'Tash. So this is an exceptional skill gem, and we kind of had these showcased in the reveal video. This one wasn't showcased itself, but a couple of the others were. So we don't actually know the level 20 gem stats for this one, just like we do for some of the others there. But let's read exactly what this does. So this is an exceptional skill gem. That means that it's going to be an end game thing. This is not going to be something that you want to league start. This might be a second or third character that you want to build into. But this is Pact of K'Tash. It says, cast a pact, empowering your damaging Vaal spells, but burdening you with an affliction. Empowered Vaal spells deal more damage, have less soul gain prevention duration, and refund souls on use. Now, we've already seen the affliction part of the skill there from the footage, and we actually saw a couple of the debuffs that can get. It's a random debuff that you actually gain when you use the skill, and once you actually use the skill, it works similar to a Warcry, so it will have a number, a counter on the skill, empowering that many skills before you actually have to use the skill again. And it also has a cooldown, just like a Warcry. I think the base cooldown is 4 seconds on the skills that we saw. And the affliction there, some of these are actually quite bad. One of the ones that they showed there was 20% reduced movement speed. They also had a reduced cast speed one. And these do not get refreshed when you actually use the skill while you already have one. They do stack up. So, you know, with a 4-second cooldown, if you're spamming this off, you are going to end up with quite a few of these debuffs there. But with it being a debuff, you can, of course, invest into debuff expiry rate modifiers. For example, you can get this node on the passive tree, you can get the mastery on duration wheels there, and the most popular one there is going to be Runegraft of the Warp, which is used on a lot of builds. That's because it grants you not just faster debuff expiry rate, but also buffs on you expiring slower. And there's also the Soul of Arakali Pantheon modifier there that you can make use of. But you can kind of stack this up quite a bit, and that way you can have those debuffs progressing faster, and the time that they actually linger on you is a little bit lower. So, what exactly does this skill actually do? Well, notably, it does say empowering your damaging Vaal spells, so this should apply to more than one Vaal spell. We don't really know how many the counter on this is going to be. On the spell one up here, this was 8, and for the damage over time one, I believe it was 3. So, honestly, this could be 2, or it could be 4, or it could be 10. Who knows, right? Nobody knows. And we're going to have to wait and see with that. But this is going to make it deal more damage, and then it will also have less soul gain prevention duration. This one is notable here because all of the modifiers that we have in the game right now are all reduced soul gain prevention duration. So this is not going to stack additively with those, it is going to be multiplicative with those, and that does mean that that's a little bit worse than it would have been if it was reduced, but this is still going to be a useful modifier. And then the last line here is refund souls on use. Now, most of the modifiers that we have in the game in terms of refunding souls are chance-based modifiers that refund all of the souls or none of the souls. You know, if they proc, they refund all. If they don't, they refund nothing. But this line here suggests that some of the souls are being refunded. So perhaps this is, again, a different mechanic coming out here. Maybe you're going to refund a percentage of the souls that are spent. Now, that's the first thing in this patch for Vaal Spells. But there's more here, because down in the unique items section, there are changes to Yaomac's Accord. Now, this is a scepter that I've made a video about a long time ago in the Forgotten Unique series, because this really is an item that not many people use. And that's because it's a difficult item to actually make use of as a main hand weapon, because it just doesn't have that good stats to justify making use of it. And now it's gaining +1 to 2 to level of all Vaal skill gems. This is actually a really impactful modifier on this item. So here is the item as it stands right now, and it's simply going to be gaining that added gem levels modifier on top of these. So it has increased damage with the Vaal skills, it has some reduced soul gain prevention duration there. It also has gain and endurance, frenzy, and power charge when you use a Vaal skill. So that's a really good way there to, you know, be able to sustain a bunch of charges if you're kind of spamming your Vaal skills. And it also has the Keystone-like effect, Shepherd of Souls. You can get this one from the Chaos Bloodline as well if you want to. But if you're making use of this scepter here, you gain this one. And the way this works is your Vaal skills have an 80% less soul cost, but for every Vaal skill that you've used in the past 8 seconds, they have a 100% increased soul cost. So this is really, really good if you make use of a Vaal skill, once every couple of seconds, maybe 3 seconds, 4 seconds, something like that, so you can actually benefit from the lower soul cost than it would have been. And it's very good if you make use of just one Vaal skill every 8 seconds. That is the case with, for example, the Vaal Cold Snap builds, where you kind of chain the skill back to back and you make sure you have just enough duration to bypass this window. But this is not going to be good if you are really spamming the Vaal skill, because this 100% increased cost is going to catch up with you very quickly, and that is not when you want to use this. So the best use case for Yaomac's Accord is going to be on those builds where you kind of have this lingering damage dealt by a Vaal skill. A good example of that might be Blade Vortex, where you use the Vaal Blade Vortex, and it's kind of this duration-based skill. It goes and tracks down enemies, and you may be able to get the soul gain prevention timer down to a place where the Vaal skill still deals damage while you're out of soul gain prevention, so you can then gain souls in that window. And other examples may be Ignite skills, things like Flame Blast Ignite, Vaal Arc Ignite. Anything where the damage can kind of linger is really quite good, because you're using your Vaal skill less often, and that means you can really benefit from that lower cost. And this is where I'm really interested in Vaal Spells for this patch, because there is this Vaal Temptation Support exceptional gem that came into the game last patch, and I made a video about that back then, where I was talking about just how useful this is to maintain, Vaal skill buffs, things like Vaal Discipline. But another use case that you can use with this is where you basically just spam your Vaal skill, and you can do that as long as you actually have the souls, because you no longer have a soul gain prevention duration. Instead, you take damage over time, physical damage over time, and the duration of that debuff is based on the soul gain prevention duration. Now that means that modifiers to soul gain prevention duration are not wasted if you use this support. For example, that modifier right there on the new Pact of K'Tash gem there, which says less soul gain prevention duration. Or the modifier over here on the Priest of Yaomac bloodline, which says 20% reduced soul gain prevention duration. Or the one on Yaomac's Accord there, 8% reduced soul gain prevention duration. All of those things are going to affect the debuff duration of Vaal Temptation. That means you can spam the skill more often, you get less kind of built up stacks, right? Because that's kind of the limiting factor of this support gem, is that you need to kind of mitigate that damage over time that you take, and ideally you don't want to build up too many of these stacks. Now, what you can actually do with that is you can make use of a gem that already has a low soul gain prevention duration. For example, Vaal Arc has 2 seconds soul gain prevention duration, and that skill, if you kind of combine it with the other modifiers there which lower the soul gain prevention duration, you're probably going to have less than a second of damage over time when you actually use it with Vaal Temptation. But the main reason that you're actually using Vaal Temptation is that when you actually use the skill, you're not entering soul gain prevention, which means that you can immediately gain Vaal souls from the usage of that skill. That means that you can chain skills back to back. And the main reason I'm interested in Vaal Arc for this patch is because they're kind of, changing up Legion and buffing it in ways, and Vaal Arc Ignite is one of the best Legion farmers in the game, and that is a really, really fun build, so I think this is going to be something really fun in this patch. Now, another thing I'll mention about Vaal Arc, in particular for Ignite, is the Stormfire ring, which got buffed this patch. It now adds more damage for hits against ignited enemies. It's about double the damage that it used to add, actually, so that's really quite strong. And this is a way to actually make the skill Ignite if you don't want to play Elementalist. There are other ways as well, but that's going to be the main 2 ways there. And of course, there are other ways to benefit from the use of lots of Vaal skills. One is, for example, the Foulborn version of Vaal Caress, which has you gain Adrenaline for 3 seconds on using a Vaal skill. That will mean that you're going to have really high uptime on the Adrenaline buff, which is really strong. That's 100% increased damage, 10% PDR, and 25% increased attack, cast, and movement speed. And even though you can't refresh the duration of the buff while you already have it, you are going to be using this skill often enough where you're able to have a very high uptime. So tying all that together, I think the new Yaomac's Accord there with the gem levels on it, plus the Pact of K'Tash, should allow you to play a build where you have this kind of sustained damage from Vaal skills. I don't think it's going to be particularly useful on skills where you just want to completely spam them out, because you are going to suffer from the Shepherd of Souls modifier there. But if you have a setup where you're kind of dealing lingering damage, for example, Flame Blast Ignite, Vaal Arc Ignite, or maybe Blade Vortex, those sort of things, anything where you have lingering damage, another example of that could be Vaal Fireball or even Vaal Spark, then you might actually be able to make use of this where you're not using the skill that often, but you're using it often enough where it is your main damage and you don't actually end up using another skill. And in that case, I actually think this is going to be really quite good. But that's all I have in this video. I just wanted to do a bit of discussion on those Vaal skills because I think that's going to be a fun second character to build around once you actually have the gear for it. Thanks for watching this video, and as always, stay tuned and stay safe.